Let's get our building hands together. We're going to put together a PC, and if you have any questions about it while I'm doing the process, pause the video, post. I'm probably not far from my phone or computer. I try to get back with you guys as quickly as possible about things, so just be sure and let me know if you need anything from me, anything I can help you with. Let's move into looking at it. We went over some pretty basic budget builds. Now, I tend to go with prices at the time for low prices to some mid-range prices, but we tried to stay within the range of the $500 mark. I'm sure what's cheap this week may not be cheap next week, so it just depends. That's just sort of how the market goes with technology. That's just how things are. But we'll try to comprise the list as best as possible and hope for the best in prices as we're working through things. So we'll comprise the best list for prices that we can to try to present you the best thing. Now, we weren't looking for anything high-end. We weren't looking for any over-the-top features. We were pretty much just looking for what best option we could do for ourselves within the price range. Anyways, that's enough of that. Let's roll into it and take a look at it. I'll go through things that I did and probably skipped a few things. So like I said, if you have questions, be sure and ask and I'll try and get back with you. Now guys, when it comes to building budget, that's what we're doing, and the ASRock B350 came in the lowest price that I could find. We're not looking for over-the-top features when it comes to a budget build. We also went with the Ryzen 5 1400, which comes in at the lowest price for the Ryzen 5 family, at least for now. We went with Team for DDR4 because they're just cheap right now, and it's hard to find cheap DDR4. The Micron SSD is 128 gigabytes, is what we'll put our OS on. Hard to replicate that, but I'll put a better option down below. 500 gigabyte mechanical hard drive for some extra storage. We went with Western Digital Blue. I'll recommend a terabyte. It's just better that way. The VS500 is a no-frills power supply, and it's 80 plus, and it's just kind of nothing to really write home about other than its price. It has more cables than we need, but we're putting it into a basement shroud to keep it nice and concealed. The First Player Gaming 120 millimeter fan there, I just happen to have one laying around, so that got thrown in. The RX 460 I got for a $40 deal. Couldn't pass that up, and it'll be great for 1080p gaming, and I'm pretty excited about that. I'll show you some stuff at the end, what we kind of ran through. Nothing super fancy, but at the end you'll get to see it. It will all be housed in Thermaltake's Versa C22, a new RGB tower, if you will. Not my favorite tower to work in. I'll show you better options at the end of this as well. So let's get started looking at it. If you'll notice at the bottom of the processor is a gold triangle. It's going to be on pretty much the bottom of every processor you buy. This gold triangle is the indication on the socket where you'll see closest to us there, a triangle cutout. Make sure you line that up. Let the pin slide in, and then close the lever to make sure that it's nice and secure into place. Be careful not to damage any pins. The DDR4, this is a common rookie mistake. If you're not paying attention to that notch there, you may be forcing it in a way it doesn't go. Just make sure you line the pins up correctly with the slots. You want to make sure that they slide in there nice and easy, and you'll see at the far right there as we push it, that locking mechanism is going to show us that it's in there secure by snapping tight. That's how you know it's in there nice and good. We're just doing a little extra pushing here because we had trouble with that one. And this is pretty much where we're at right now. So we have the processor installed and we have the RAM installed. Now we're going to take a look at installing the new Wraith cooler. Something I forgot to mention, and I'll show you here in just a moment. You might notice as I'm screwing this in, how do you put that on there? Well, you got to take those brackets off that are on the motherboard too. These brackets right here, you got to make sure you remove those. Just take a screwdriver, take them out before you start trying to install the fan. They're located to the north of the processor and to the south of the processor. Really easy to remove and pretty simple, pretty straightforward. So once you've done that, just make sure you're screwing. Don't make it overly tight. Just get enough tension on there so it's resting nice and firm on the processor. Once we have this pretty much done, that's where we're going to stop here for now, and we're going to move into putting the power supply into the tower so that we can start kind of looking at some stuff from there, as well as doing our hard drives. I kind of like doing some tower assembly first before we start putting everything else together. It just makes sense to me. And if you see tiny hands here, that's because I got my great nephew helping me out, because he's going to be the one that's going to be doing his 1080p esports gaming on this PC. So of course I made him come learn how to do some of this. That's the price you pay. Now, the good thing about this tower is there is a basement shroud. The bad thing about this tower is it's a pain to work in. It is not a very comfortable to work in tower. If you're more interested in how working in this tower was, go check out the Thermaltake Versa C22 review I did on it. Actually, not too long ago, probably about a week ago by the time I'm working on this. And it's just kind of lackluster. It does have toolless drive bays, which is cool because that's kind of a standard now. You'll see these little pins here. Once you get those kind of situated in there, they just sort of snap and hold, and they hold nice and well. And then you can just slide it back into the bay and let it be ready to be connected to SATA power and to the SATA to the motherboard later. Once we had that nice and in there, I decided that where I was going to put the SSD is actually on the removable SSD tray on the back of the tower. It's probably not the best option for this tower, as there's really not a lot of clearance between the case closure and this, and that's just something that I probably should have thought of beforehand and maybe gone with that one over to the left a little bit, maybe done a little bit of the inside one. Again, that Micron SSD is going to be hard to come by, but I'll put a good option down in the description below. Now, once we have that secured on there, we're going to flip the tower over and we're going to start putting the motherboard and our accessories and pieces inside. Keeping in mind, there's really not a whole lot going on here, so it's a pretty straightforward build. We're going to line it up with the I/O shield in the back that you can see there, and we're going to try to get it as situated in there as possible on top of the standoffs. Usually a tower will have a small piece that kind of comes up in the middle to help secure the motherboard in place over top the standoffs. If not all your standoffs are installed, make sure you put them in there to kind of support the motherboard. They're good for multiple purposes, such as grounding. Once the motherboard is secured and in place, we'll start doing things like wiring our front pin connectors, which I'm going to talk a little bit about too, because there's kind of a rookie thing in there to mention as well. For some people that don't know, we go around and make sure that the motherboard is screwed securely into place. After this, we're going to kind of bring our wires down. We'll kind of route them through that top one that's not grommeted at the top there. And this is what I want to talk about. The front panel connectors come with these small pins. Everybody's seen them and dealt with them. So let's talk about that for a second. They're indicated with positive and negative. The kind of strange thing about this is the pins themselves are indicated with a triangle and a nothing, which you'll see right here. The triangle actually means positive. So you want to match triangle with positive and negative with nothing. Does that make sense? I hope it does. That's sort of how you're going to want to wire it. They should all be appropriately labeled to what they need to be plugged into in the JFPs on front of the motherboard. We can see here that this was pretty ugly mess right here, trying to route those up through that grommet that gets kind of covered by the motherboard. Kind of what I mean by working in this tower is not sort of the best, and it's pretty ugly, but luckily this tower has a dark panel that kind of makes it hard to see anything. Next, we're going to take our RX 460, which you can see I wasn't really thinking here, and I sort of routed those PCI pins through, not realizing that we're actually just going to be running off of PCI power. There's absolutely no need for the PCIe pins right there to come through at all. We don't need that extra rail voltage to power it, which is cool. That's one of AMD's big things is efficiency right now. They're running on that efficiency platform, and that sort of worked out to our advantage here. It kind of keeps the mess down, makes it look nice and pretty. And all you saw me doing right there, I was just sort of lining things up to make sure I took out the right rear pieces. After doing it enough, I always take out the wrong one. I might as well look before I leap. Once we have that secured snugly into place, I'll be screwing those back on, and we're getting pretty close to finished here before we're going to be putting our OS in. The only really different things I didn't show you was some of the cable management, but it's not complicated to do. We put two bright LED white light strips in here, hoping to kind of illuminate the tower, but even in darkness, it was sort of lackluster and didn't do a lot of justice for it. I was a little bit sad about this. This is with, some darkness in the room, and you really can't see in there. Now let's run through a couple of really simple benchmarks. I did play it through Unigine Heaven and Unigine Valley, going over and just showing you just a quick shot of some of the specifications here. If you want to pause the video, go back, look at that, and then go for it. Nothing super fancy because we're not building a high-end rig. It did score respectively 811 on Ultra Extreme, which was pretty cool for Unigine Heaven, and something that's kind of hard to accomplish with a cheap $500 build. 1583 with Custom Ultra settings on Unigine Valley, so that was something that was pretty nice as well. I was glad that I was able to achieve such good results for such a low-end, low-powered build. And here's just a quick shot if you want to pause or go back and pause and take a look at some of that. You can sort of see where we were doing power and heat and how much usage was in play there. Now, the Versa C22, I know I feel like I've said it a bunch, just not one of my favorite towers. Go with NZXT 340 and the Elite version for $100, the regular version for $70, and I think you'll be a lot better off if you do that. So let's finish up there and go to the outro. Guys, what's up? I wanted to point out a really cool option for some fans too if you want. I was actually looking at budget RGB stuff, off-brand things, and then I came across this guy, OUT ALittleDIMM, and I don't know if I completely get the joke. Is it dim because he usually has dim backgrounds, or is it a play on because he's a really smart guy, dim seeming, or perhaps dim like a RAM slot, like so dim. I get it. That's probably what it is. Anyways, he did a really cool video on a 3-pack of RGB fans, things I've been looking at. They're currently out of stock because I've been kind of watching that myself, but definitely go check out his stuff because he had a great option that I didn't get the opportunity to present to you. So if you want a little bit of extra flair for your tower, I'm of course going to recommend things like the Fantex $15 2-pack of magnetic strips for RGB lighting, but that's a great option too. They're very reminiscent of the Air fans, and I definitely recommend checking out his video. He did a really thorough, really good review on it, and I watched him. I was like, I'm a fan. I don't really subscribe very often because I don't know. I'm that way, I guess. But definitely subscribe to him. Not a big subscriber base yet, but I imagine this guy's going to grow. He crushes it, and he's going to be fantastic. Go check out his stuff. It's really cool. He's got a lot of cool stuff too. He also did the glaive mouse, which I nerdily stalked other people that did that as well. Anyways, guys, I hope that this was helpful. Have a great day, night, whatever it is. Dim like you're stupid, maybe?